And I'll never forget, because Bobby Conner walked up to me and he just said something really strange. He said, "Hey, boy, how'd you like to travel the world with me? God says you're a young eagle, and I'm supposed to mentor you." And I was like, "What?"
Wow.
Yeah, I was shocked. I'm like, "Me? Like, for real?" And I didn't even know Bobby. I had went there because of some of the other speakers. And so anyway, one of my friends told me, he's like, "Dude, you better like travel with that guy. He's a prophet." And I had no grid for it. And so literally I just said, "Okay, well, where do you want me to go?" And he gave me a list of places, and I started traveling with him.
That's
and he
incredible.
just started pouring in.
Wow. Yeah, because Bobby doesn't really do that, right? He doesn't really open that up to a lot of people. So that's a very special kind of mentoring kind of thing that he invited you into. That's awesome.
Yeah. And when it first started, I think I just annoyed him, dude. Like, I would ask him all kinds of questions, and I could see him. He was like, I was stretching him. You know what I mean? Like, I would be like, "Hey, is that guy, is that guy a prophet? Is that guy of God? Is this dude?" Like,
what did you learn during the season? Like, what did you actually learn from watching Bobby?
The most valuable thing that I learned in the first season is actually interesting, was identity,
Wow.
And the first trip I went on with Bobby was, we went to Europe together. And when we went, he told me all these stories, face-to-face encounters with the Lord, like dreams, visions, angelic visitations, how Jesus like would speak all these secrets to him and show him, all these mysteries. And it was cool at first. And then after 2 days, man, I was like, "Am I even saved?" I was like, "What the heck? Like, this guy's salvation's so different than mine." And I was actually getting really frustrated. Like,
wow.
And then I'll never forget one day, he looked at me and he goes, "Boy, you're frustrated, aren't you?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "You can't lie to me. I'm a prophet." And I went, "Okay, I'm frustrated." And he goes, "You think I'm sharing with you all these testimonies because I want to be more spiritual than you?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "I'm sharing them with you because it's impartation."
That's incredible.
And he said to me, "The key to my ministry is this: the testimony of Jesus, the spirit of prophecy." He said, "You get what you talk about." And he said to me, he goes, "You know what your problem is?" And I said, "What?" He goes, "You think like an orphan, not like a son."
Wow.
And you know what, though? The way he said it, it wasn't even offensive. It was just kind of like, you need to change the way you think, And he said to me, "You know how I got all my encounters?" He said, "I read the Bible not from the perspective of idolizing man." He said, "But I read the Bible as God's no respecter of persons." And he says, "So if God did it with Elijah, if he did it with Ezekiel, if he did it with Paul, then I'm his son too." And so he said, I handcuff God with his own word.
That's incredible.
And I tell him, "Lord, I want this," until he tells me, "You can have it or shut up."
Wow.
He said, I go after it. And so literally he said to me, he goes, "You need to look at those that are more mature than you in the eyes of a son." He said, "Orphans always get upset about what they don't have. Sons recognize what's available."
That's so good.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
And it changed me, because from that moment on, instead of being jealous, I started looking at Bobby and even others around me that carried something I didn't. And I started going, "You know what, God, if you'll do it with them, you'll do it with me too, because I'm your son." And I celebrate and I honor what is on their life. And out of that place of honoring the anointing on someone, you get access. And instead of the frustration, now you have the right spirit, which is a teachable spirit, and you can learn, And it was literally the next weekend that I got, transported. And I had an angelic visitation, and that probably sounds extreme.
You got transported. Like, was it like a transportation miracle, or you went out into the spirit? So
basically, what happened was, Bobby told me, he goes, "You get what you talk about." And so I was hanging out with a friend of mine named Craig, and basically I was telling him all the Bobby Conner stories. He told me like 100 of them. And anyway, we were on a plane flying home from New Jersey to Vancouver, Canada. And as we're flying, and I'm telling these stories, flashes of light start going poof, poof, poof. And I'm like freaking out going, "What is that?" And the Lord goes, "That's the angels."
Wow.
And so I'm like, wow, it's working. And we get to Vancouver. My brother Josh picks us up in my car, and we start driving. And my friend is in the back, and I'm just telling more stories. And all of a sudden, everything changes. And my friend in the back starts screaming. He's like, "What's happening? We're in Mississippi. We're in Mississippi." And we're no longer on the Vancouver highway. We're on a normal street. There's a stop sign. My brother stops. So there's a guy mowing the lawn on the right-hand side. And I remember, like, when this stuff happens, your brain doesn't work. Like, it freaks out, It's like a tilt with with a pinball machine. And so I'm looking, and my friend's like, "I know that guy. I went to high school with him." And then all of a sudden, poof, we're back on the Vancouver highway, and we're driving, and we're like, "What was that?" And so my friend calls the dude. like an hour later, he goes, "Hey, were you just mowing the lawn?" And the guy's like, "Craig, you're freaking me out." He's like, "Yeah, I was mowing the lawn. How do you know that?" And he's like, "Because we were there, man." Like,
Wow,
the guy was tripping,
wow.
and I'll never forget. I called Bobby back. I said, "Bobby, at work, we're talking about God and what you told me. It worked." I said, "We just got transported from Vancouver to Jackson, Mississippi, and back." And here's all his response was, "Huh. Well, ain't that something, boy?" And he goes, "Good job. Keep talking about God." And he goes, "Well, I got to go." And he hung up.